conversation.
I do want to
understand.
open this up to something that we could
More broadly.
all explore, including you, Avius.
Oh.
Vivian, I don't know if we want to go here. If you don't, we can just table it. But you talked, I don't know if you want to talk about GamerGate, but it is somewhat related to gaming and feminism. You have strong opinions. Actually, everyone here was involved in that conversation to some capacity. You have three of us who were involved with GamerGate. You have Yuha, and who has a very negative opinion of it. And Avius actually is a self-described third-party troll. Do you want to describe what you did unconnected to GamerGate? And actually, I believe Cece was actually a member of the GamerGate Anti-Harassment Patrol and may have actually encountered Mr. Avius at one point.
Oh no. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I had you like temp banned or whatever.
Oh, you probably did because I made alt after alt after alt, but you never got my original account. Never banned. Just want to point that out. But my role in GamerGate was essentially I ended up getting into some bad Skype groups, and these Skype groups would simply post usernames. They would either belong to Twitter or they would belong to Tumblr. Once these usernames were posted, you would go through the username and see who was already hit, who wasn't hit. You would literally, you and five other guys would spam the fuck out of them, harass them, send them goddamn death threats. We would send them porn. We would send them fucking gore photos. Anything to fuck with them, anything to annoy them and ruin their day.
That sounds like you're a horrible, shitty person.
And to be clear,
Absolutely.
just so we can clarify, you were not actually a part of GamerGate. And you didn't know what GamerGate was even at the time.
No, I had no fucking idea what was even happening. My gripe that I had was I lived in a very bad neighborhood at the time, and most of my friends were black, and they didn't care if I said the N-word. So when I went online and started saying the N-word, a lot of SJW types took problem with that and started correcting me. And I didn't take lightly to that, so that's how I ended up diving into the GamerGate Skype groups. It was literally.
Well, they weren't GamerGate Skype groups, to be clear.
Well, okay, yeah, they're harassment Skype groups.
So, do you have anything you want to ask Oron, CC, myself, or the self-described third-party troll, Mr. Avius?
Well, I just want to point out how much of the bullshit that he did GamerGate get blamed for.
A lot. A lot.
True! I'm the problem. Yes, very true.
But I mean, you were what, 16 at the time?
No, I was 14 at the time of GamerGate.
Okay, so 14. This happened a lot with like Christian also got trolled a lot by mostly teenagers. And so she became very infamous for it. And it's a problem when we try to suggest that adult men who are gaming are the same as, let's say, 14-year-olds, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's also a problem when you've got people, like some of the arguments I've had on this stream with Vivian, where it's, oh, Gamergate was just about sending death threats to Zoe Quinn and so forth. And it's like, you don't know who sent those threats. I don't deny that she got them, but for all I know, it was Avius sending them.
I mean...
True.
I
was a fucking monster.
They just weren't... I mean, we all saw the fucking media coming out of that shit at the time, right? Like,
it was bad.
It was incredibly vitriolic towards Anita Sarkeesian, Zoe Quinn. Like, I wasn't actually involved in this shit at the time at all. But I was but I had to study it later for work, basically. So I've seen a lot of the fucking media coming out.
But there's a difference between vitriolic and death and rape threats. Yeah, people were heated at her. People were mad. She was in fact trying to take our video games away, and to a large extent she did. People had a right to be mad. But there's a difference between they were vitriolic and they were sending death threats. She was at the UN going, oh, well, it's not just the rape threats. It's also people saying you're a liar and you suck. No, she was a liar and she does suck. And that's valid to call her.
It seemed so, Vivian. I want to say too, and I know Oron's touched upon this a little bit, but it's there was this great conflation between people who have like actual critiques. Like I made videos criticizing Anita Sarkeesian, and like I actually like I think I did like a pretty like fair minded approach. Like okay, I thought you made an interesting point here. At one point, I said actually when she criticized Dark Link, I actually did give her credit for that, and I thought that was interesting. I didn't think of things in that way before. So like I think I was like pretty fair minded and like always open to criticism, always open to like fair minded criticism. And so were a lot of other people, and like this was conflated, and so was all of Gamergate conflated with like stuff like these trolling groups like Avius was a part of, and he didn't even know what Gamergate was. And I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, Avius. You were 14, like I don't really
Oh yeah,
care.
no. Hang on. Let me establish this right now for everybody. I was a retard, and I'm fully aware I was a retard.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just like I'm not trying to say like you're an evil person or anything, like because like what you did
Oh
back then
no,
was bad, but like
I was an
no,
evil
you're a
piece of
kid. You
shit.
were a
You can
kid.
even say that.
You were a kid. Like I'm not gonna like I don't hit somebody over.
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of
14,
kids are
so
evil
it's
pieces
not
of
like
shit. Kids are fucking sociopathic, honestly.
But like there was this conflation though. Like
Nobody ever got bullied in school. Like, come on, kids are fucking psychos. They will do shit that adults wouldn't even fucking dream of outside of a war zone.
You know,
There's
that was the funny thing. I was the stereotypical white kid. I was a fucking monster online, but I was never violent in public unless somebody fought me first.
that's something that anonymity can sort of cause. Now, I just still think the benefits to anonymity are greater, and I had this discussion a lot during Gamergate about it with feminists, and it slowly became not so feminist because of the Gamergate. They kicked me out. They were like, "How dare you?" So, but yes, um, arguably, it has more to do with the anonymity capacity, but I don't think that that's inherently bad.
Well, just what I see is largely about the collective blame angle. Like, yeah, there were people sending rape and death threats, but it's very difficult to tell who they were. And Gamergate Spaces went to a lot of effort to try to ban and to denounce and to distance ourselves from those harassers. Were we perfect? No, but nobody fucking is. But we did certainly, I would say, much more than the average angry internet movement about anything to try to clamp down on that bad behavior. And a lot of the stuff that we were getting blamed for was coming from third-party trolls. And nobody believed us at the time. And the media narrative was just, oh, Gamergate is all about sending these kinds of horrible messages. And whenever we said, well, it's third-party trolls, a lot of it is third-party trolls, and we're trying to control it, we're trying to stop these people, we're trying to ban these people, they would say, oh, you're just full of shit. And no, we know for a fact there were third-party trolls. We've got a former third-party troll on this stream admitting it, but it's not like it wasn't known before. One guy who was a third-party troll doing a bunch of stuff in Gamergate and a million other things. I don't remember his name, but I do remember that he got arrested by the FBI.
True.
It's known that this was a thing. And yet all these years later, we're still being told, oh, Gamergate was just about sending death threats. And Gamergate was just about harassing these women. And no, it fucking wasn't.
and then and also we got harassed by these trolls too. All three of the
Yeah.
Gamergate people here, including myself, all three of us received like a fair amount of harassment.
Yeah,
It absolutely
probably. I
was.
mean, you know, if you're hanging out in spaces like 4chan or whatever, you're gonna fucking
I was
No,
on
no,
Reddit.
that's on
do that
Twitter.
I
shit.
was on a normal fucking Reddit. I don't
4chan
use 4chan,
poll was very fun at that time.
I'm sure it was.
but
I was just on Twitter because I don't go 4chan. Like, I'm not gonna fuck around with that. But I got some very bad stuff. Like, yeah, like the worst. I don't know. Like, one of them was a Brazilian guy. He was harassing Anita. Now, he wasn't a troll. He was straight up, like, he wasn't a gamer either. He's literally not a gamer. The FBI did investigate him, but they couldn't arrest him because he's in freaking Brazil. And there's no like extradition for like death and rape threats. But yeah, he was really bad. And the stuff I got from like just anti-Gamergate people was some of it cut deep. And I showed my dad a lot of it at the time. I had screen caps, and he works with journalists, so he gave it to them like regular political journalists because he's a political journalist fact checker. And so he gave it to them, and they were still like, well, that's just what happens in gaming space. And I'm like, no, it's not. I've never gotten this kind of thing from anyone before.
My subreddit stalkers were not trolls. They were dedicated anti-Gamergate people.
Yeah.
Who, a small group of them continued it for years, and in one of their spaces, comments were made towards me like in some sort of hypothetical revolution scenario, I should be put up against a wall and shot.
Yeah, I still have some anti-gamer people who they harassed me out of a volunteer space in real life, and when I tried to do one online, I wasn't even like a mod position kind of thing. It was like a semi mod, and they just went so after the real mods, saying I can't even be that much entangled with it because I was going to bring down the whole like group and the public image, and just you had to completely ban me from everything. So they didn't ban me completely outright, but they did take me down from even like the demi mod because yeah. So
It's so
yeah.
weird how stupid, insignificant internet drama around fucking video games spills out into so much like disgusting violence towards each other.
Yeah. And I don't think it's gaming though. Like I think it was just I think part of it was also because people were so lied to that they really believed they were in the right, that they were like quote unquote fighting Nazis. And at the time, like punch a Nazi was definitely a thing when like it led to Elliot Spencer
Oh, it's
getting
still a
punched.
thing. You mean Richard Spencer?
Richard Spencer. Who's
Yeah.
Elliot Spencer?
I don't know what it is. They just
Nick
have a
Spencer's the
magnetic. They
DC
have a
writer. Whatever.
magnetism for fists.
It's true.
Okay, so I can't.
Nazi faces do just attract fists. It's crazy.
Well, the problem
They do
comes
have
when the people want to be both the Nazi punchers and the judges of who is a Nazi and thus valid to punch.
Yeah, I'm a great
anyone who disagrees with them.
I'm an incredible judge of who is a Nazi. Actually.
Yeah, to be honest, like half the time, I might overuse a term just because I'm like, okay, this is already going downhill. I'm just going to count this as a slippery slope, and then I call someone a reactionary. But there's not a lot that gets past you when you're an actual leftist because it's like liberals can get like on board with something that a Nazi says if the Nazi just says it within like establishment rhetoric. So it's very easy for Nazis to dog whistle.
Agree with that.
Well, that's where we got dog whistling from. So, but like the reason that the left is more likely to hear past that is because we're very critical of the establishment.
Oh, for me, it's just because I spent my teens actually punching Nazis.
Yes, you're a unicorn, Viv. I love you.
But like, I don't think you're a Nazi, Oron. I think you're a useful fucking idiot, but I don't think you're a Nazi.
That's what everybody said about me at the time too.
It'd be a little hard for me to be a Jewish Nazi.
No, it fucking wouldn't.
That's just called
Surprisingly
Zionism.
enough.
That's just called Zionism.
No, it's not called Zionism.
Please,
But
please stop.
Then what is it?
using that
Okay, then
word.
what is it?
Seriously.
Actually, I'm curious, Viv.
Can I just
what's
point
it?
something
Oh
out?
no, there are like
That is-
actual open
that is-
Jewish Nazi groups.
that-
It's fucking
The fucking
insane.
Zionism
Oh,
thing
okay.
is a Ukrainian or an Iranian dog whistle, not Ukrainian. It's an Iranian dog whistle. They came up with that nonsense. If you want to,
It's also the formal.
and
It's also the
his
formal position.
yahoos use their party name. Just call them Likudniks.
It's also the formal position of Likud, right? Like, don't get me wrong. And Zionism takes many different forms.
Zionism
And Nine Tails is entirely wrong to say that Zionism is synonymous with Nazism because it fucking isn't.
Oh my god, Viv, that was.
Does anyone actually want to
happening.
talk about
It's
Zionism right
very
now?
boring.
It is very boring.
Yes, let's do it.
No, you're not
No.
again. Not after
No,
your
especially
last
since we're
fucking.
probably going to
Not
end with
after
the next
Tom's
half
last
hour or
one.
so,
Damn
if
it.
not sooner. But I mean, this is a great opportunity. You both have
But the
like
GamerGate movement did create an entire wave of reactionaries, right?
No, it did not.
Wait.
It
Here's
did
the
I'll
thing.
let
let's
you
hear
look.
her out
I'll
real
let
quick.
you say your fucking piece in response or whatever, right? But the anti SJW video complex that came out of the GamerGate shit, absolutely did. Like it took someone like Sargon, who was like mostly bitching about random random shit on college campuses and so on, to the point now where he's like, I don't think it's unfair to call Sargon a full-on fucking fascist, right? At the very least, he's like a hyper nationalist, isolationist, racist,
Oh
who
no,
has
he
said
turned
on
into a Nazi.
stream
He's
that he
legitimate.
believes that. Sorry.
No, he turned into a Nazi. He is
Okay, fine,
legitimate.
good. I'm glad we're on a similar page at least, right? He's a piece of shit, okay? And a lot of the anti SJW fucking channels went exactly the same way, because anti SJWism, anti wokeism, all of this shit is just the exact same extension of the same fucking culture war that's been had for ages about cultural Marxism, or cultural Bolshevism as the Nazis called it, right? Just gets repackaged
As
every few fucking years for whatever audience wants to eat it up.
someone who
So
was
yeah,
go ahead.
so yeah, they repackaged that propaganda. They sold it to a bunch of people, some of whom didn't fall completely down the hole, but quite a lot of whom did.
No, I think like Gamergate probably like did sort of like a bit of a boost to like the anti-SJW sentiment, but like this was going to happen always because a lot of the stuff that the anti-SJWs, including like myself, I was an anti-SJW YouTuber to an extent. That was like my main focus, but like I did talk about that stuff sometimes. Um, that a lot of the stuff they were criticizing was like really bad, actually. Like a lot
Can
of the
I
stuff that like this,
can
the
I get
quote
my
unquote.
rebuttal?
Go ahead.
I don't think it's fair to blame Gamergate for that, because Gamergate was itself a reaction. It was not the start of the fire. If you want to find something to blame for the rise of the alt-right and what have you, then frankly, you should really blame yourselves, because
Okay.
it was the woke.
Myself.
We
Hang
didn't
on.
really have the
Hang on.
term woke at the time, but it was the people we would now call woke who were doing shit like trending hashtag kill all men and supporting all of Anita's nonsense and vilifying, Gamergate before it was even Gamergate.
So
And
now I have to do my avious confession here. Before Gamergate, I was definitely not quite in the kill all men camp, but I was very hardcore vitriolic.
See? Okay, that's what I was about to say. I was actually
I
going
wrote
to back up
called
what he
myself
was saying.
a Nazi. I hung out with people who, basically did the same thing. They were like, the solution is to be, super aggressive and like bamf back all the like terrible 4channer types. So yeah, like this is my avious confession.
but
Thank you.
if
That
stuff
was
like
fucking
that was
beautiful.
going
Thank you.
on and it was being abetted by the establishment, by the journalists, by the tech companies, by all of the sort of left-wing power structure, then of course you were going to get a negative reaction to that.
Well,
Okay.
When
What do
Gamergate,
you think
don't-
the hashtag kill all men tag came out of? Are we
it,
just gonna do this infinite fucking regression thing?
yeah, we are going to do this infinite
Oh,
fucking
okay. Well,
regression thing because politics
if we're
politics is
gonna
going
go,
to recreate your own demons.
okay, if we're gonna go infinite regression, right? Then the root of all of these fucking problems is a deeply unfair, inequitous society in which women have been second-class citizens for the vast majority of it. That's where hashtag kill all men ends up coming out of. It's a fucking disgusting thing to say. I don't think we should kill all men, right? But it did start originally as like fucking satirical in response to the amount of misogyny that was existing on the internet at the time.
But
So,
I do have an
If you're
issue with this
going to
framing,
go-
though.
it's
I
like
do
it's
have.
like
kill all men.
saying everything is a response to everything else, right?
Okay, but
Is very boring.
But there's
But
this.
you are right. Yeah, we need
May
to.
I?
If you want
Go ahead,
to
Cece.
address all of these, if you want to address all of these problems, then you have to address the root causes of them, which are fucking patriarchy, capitalism, all those fucking things that you'd be like, oh, it's woke to rail against. Those are the root causes of all these things.
Like in your opinion,
Okay, but
like.
here's an argument I was
Not in
trying
my
to make
opinion.
before with Gamergate. So
Actually,
when the journalists were, pretending to be super woke and making stupid ass articles, they weren't really activists. They didn't believe in a single word they said. We demonstrably proved in Gamergate that most of them were lying the same way that the virtue signaling CEOs did. They were worse in a lot of cases. We showed, like, mathematically, pretty much whenever somebody came out and said, I condemn Gamergate because gamers are terrible people, it was like Gian Gameshi, which broke my heart because I love Moxie Frubis, but he came out and was like against it, and then like 2 weeks later it was shown that he was violently assaulting women he dated.
What
So
do we end up
yeah,
calling
like
it? Airports law?
You
yeah.
said you said you proved that mathematically. Also, you must be Canadian as fuck to be mentioning Gian Gomeshi.
I must be what, Canadian?
Yeah,
I'm
No, I'm
American as
actually
fuck, and even I know who Gian Gameshi is.
I guess the story
I
was
have no
pretty vague.
fucking idea.
I only remember him from Gamergate. That's the only reason, because he was anti-GG.
I'm
Yeah,
from Massachusetts, so I'm like actually kind of older than you think. So everybody was kind of like super into the band. Like my best friends were the ones who got me into it. So and I
But
do
like
singing, so acapella.
nearly a decade later, y'all are still stuck on the same fucking shit and can't deal with it. You got to deal with the world as it is now, you know.
And okay, so don't assume for me how I am now. I've had a complete decade to get things together. The only reason this got brought back up is because Takion's doing a book, and that's fine. Like, that's great.
Yep.
Well, I am kind of not over it yet. And I'm not sure I
Yeah,
ever
but-
will be, because what happened was really fucking unfair on a massive scale, that we got blamed for all of this stuff. And I mean, you're still blaming us, Vivian. You say that we were the start of this massive wave of reactionary stuff. And
It
no,
was.
we were not the start.
Can I
Okay,
ask
you
you a
were
question?
okay.
had-
If you want to say you're not at the start, I'll
Avis
amend
can go.
my statement to a huge flashpoint, right?
Thank you.
Okay.
I mean, I
so,
don't know how much that matters, but
Well,
it
it
seems
does
to matter to him.
There are still large subreddits on Reddit that, if you have posting history on the Gamergate subreddit, Kotaku in Action, you are automatically banned from those subreddits.
Yeah,
And
seems reasonable to keep some of the worst fucking harassers on the internet
the
away from
Oh,
certain
See, like, there you
spaces.
go
now
again. There you go
we're
again,
harassers
Vivian.
again. Now we're the worst fucking harassers again. But you can't prove that.
I said
And you
some of.
know that there were third-party trolls. But here's the thing: those ban messages, those automatic ban messages, make claims like that Kotaku in Action and Gamergate were a cause of the Capitol riot. So yeah, we are getting blamed for being the start of everything. I have heard that Gamergate caused the election of Donald Trump more
I don't know. I'm
times
pressing
than
X to doubt. I'm pressing X to doubt on
I
this
mean,
one.
No,
Okay, I'll show you.
What we
I'll
just said, right, was that Gamergate was a massive flashpoint for an explosion in reactionary
but
action in the
I mean,
you're
most
mainstream.
of us were
arguing that that's
liberals.
Which,
not
Most of us
true.
weren't. Most of us weren't this reactionary thing that you're making
Yeah,
us
I
out
know,
to be.
and Sargon was a liberal too, right? But like, and now Oron says that he's a Nazi. The point was that it caused an explosion in this particular reactionary ideology, right? And
Look,
I don't think that Gamergate is the sole cause of like Trump getting elected or whatever, right? But I do think that you can name it as one of the signposts along the way to where we are now.
Oh, Avius wanted to go, I
In,
think, right?
in the
was
same
a
sense
sign
that
that was
everything
a
is.
warning sign. And maybe if that warning
Yes.
had been listened to instead of
Listen
stomped
to,
on
what would you
and
like us
set
to
on
do about it?
fire,
Okay,
maybe
if we
if the
listen to
warning
the
had been
warning, what?
listened
Okay, what is the warning, and what do we do about it if we listen to it?
okay, the warning is that the ideology we now know as wokeness is
I
going
still
to
don't know what that is, but
Well,
is
yeah.
going to
can I jump in with this actually real quick? Actually, no. I'm
Please.
sorry. Avius wanted to say something. I'm sorry, Avius. Go, and then I'll.
I'd still rather. I want to hear the end of Oren's answer, if that's
But
okay.
I have a good answer too.
I'm sure you do. Can I hear Oren's first, and
Sorry,
then hear
go,
yours?
Aaron. And then
all right. The warning is that stuff like Anita's brand of feminism is going too far. It is widely unpopular. It is generating a very negative backlash, and it needs to be toned down. And maybe if that had been listened to, if it had become more acceptable in the mainstream to criticize Anita without being lumped in with the harassers, if it became more acceptable in the mainstream to advocate for bringing back some of these so-called tropes that she demanded rid of and largely got rid of, then maybe some of those people would have calmed the fuck down, checked out of these online spaces and gone back to their normal lives. You've got somebody like Sargon who over a period of a decade got incredibly radicalized. He didn't start out that way. He wasn't just, wearing a
Oh
mask.
no, it was more profitable for him to keep going in that direction.
no, it's
I
also
don't
it's
think
also
I
that
this.
don't.
This
is
is the point I wanted.
necessarily
To, it's expanding upon Oron's. It's that there was this very real ideological capture in like large swaths of games journalism, and not just games journalism, but like other areas too. But it was very noticeable in games journalism, and the answer to a bunch of people who had in many cases legitimate concerns or even at least wanted to have a conversation was to paint with an extremely broad brush and say that everybody is a misogynist, a harasser. We're going to have block lists. We're going to get rid of you. We're going to basically snuff your voice out to the greatest extent that we possibly can in every way that we possibly can. And like that is like a regressive thing. It's not
Okay, and
it's
are you
not
sure?
liberal to be having this sort of response. Like I think that Gamergate in some ways, it's not the full picture, but in some ways Gamergate was this reaction within the left, this conflict within the left between people who were more liberal in the classical sense and people who had this very hardcore progressive ideology, which is fine. They can have that ideology, but that ideology, unfortunately, so many of them paired it with this no dissent allowed view.
I keep noticing that you're sort of like narrating for the anti-GGers and saying, or like the feminists in this case, and saying like, "Oh, we're against all men," blah blah blah. When that
That was
really
Oron.
like,
Well,
well,
I just think
that
it's
wasn't as
interesting that
common as the
it's
people.
Anita Sarkeesian that ends up being like Anita Sarkeesian is relatively fucking milk toast in the world of feminists, right?
Yeah,
Like you've got people like Julie Bindel who, at the time that Gamergate was going on, was giving a fucking interview saying all men should be put in concentration camps and like maybe loved ones can take them out like library books, right? But you don't go against those people. And then the same fucking people that will bitch about wokeness and whatever, right, will stand up and prop up people like Julie Bindel now because she's attacking trans people.
Oh,
And
I,
it's
I
and
and
completely
yeah, you
agree
don't
with
like
you
it when
on
we
that, but I
generalize
just think
you,
that that goes both
or
ways.
please, you don't like it when we generalize you. But when you said like this is all that the feminists say, you're doing that exact same thing. That has nothing to do with feminism trying to get rid of all men.
Well, then
what?
what do you want me to call this?
Hang
I
on,
mean,
can I say
look,
something? Can
it's
I
one.
say a
Avius
qualifier real
Avius
quick?
has been
I
waiting for a
don't. I
long
don't
time.
think. I
Selective
don't think
hearing?
Anita. I
Avius has
don't
been
think
waiting a
Anita.
long time. He really has.
I'm just going to say a qualifier real quick. I think there was just as many women saying all men need to be put in concentration camps as there were trolls like me sending death threats. I think
Okay,
those
but
were equal in numbers.
okay, but I was talking. What I was saying is, we're talking about. So when I mentioned Julie Bindel, I mentioned her because she's like a widely respected feminist thinker and activist. And those words fucking like turn to ash in my fucking throat because I cannot stand the bitch, alright? And I don't believe that what she represents is good feminism. But regardless, she spoke wildly on the topic of feminism and has engaged in activism towards anti-sex work activism, anti-domestic violence activism. Some things I agree with, some things I don't. Right? But she's like an actual person out there doing activism. She writes fucking articles in newspapers and shit. Right? I'm not talking about Twitter trolls or whatever. And those people, the fucking put men in concentration camps people, they're the fucking gender criticals of today. They're the TERFs of today, right? And yet all the GamerGators are like bang on their fucking side when it comes to like shitting on trans people.
Well,
And that
I
might
think
be
you would
the
be vastly mistaken on that because I remember us arguing with Julie Bindel even back then because we knew she was a TERF and she is not beloved by GamerGaters.
I
Now,
remember
mind you,
Graham Linehan was pretty anti-GamerGate at the time as well, but
Graham
now
Lim
he's
was extremely
yeah.
anti-Gamergate. Like I
But
know a
now
lot of
he's on
trans
now he's on
people
your
who were
side.
in Gamergate, so they
No,
got into
he's not on our side. He
Now he's
tried
on
to
your side.
be, and
He's absolutely denounced Anita Sarkeesian as dick
yeah,
pandering
because she wasn't
handmaid.
grateful enough to her white knight.
Yeah,
But
she
here's
wasn't
the thing.
grateful enough to him, and
Here's the thing, and
she
I
doesn't
can
hate
dig this
trans
up if
people
you
the way he does. Yeah.
I can dig this up if you want, but he tried to make overtures to Gamergate, and you know what we told him? We told him to go fuck himself.
That was very strong of you. You're
I'm
very
just saying,
strong.
a lot of the GamerGators very much on the side of the TERFs now with regards to trans people.
some of them maybe, but you shouldn't say most GamerGaters because statistically it's not true. We did it done, but there have been actual books and studies on trying to self-report, mind you. So is that accurate? I mean, probably not, but there's definitely a few at minimum who are trans and very liberal, like me.
uh,
And
go ahead.
so it's just
I mean,
By the way,
I'm just
But
rating.
like,
I'm
trans
like
just
and like
actually, like I
commenting
do
on
Christians
want to.
are
the.
I
human
actually have some
rights.
I'm
interesting
just commenting on the
context to
media
add
figures.
actually for this because I Gamergate I feel actually was like it was not 100% pro-trans by any stretch. There's obviously like
right.
it's a societal thing. There's obviously people are gonna have disagreements on it. It's a major hot button cultural issue in our society. People are gonna have different views. But like I think like especially for like the first like 2 years, Gamergate was actually very pro-trans. Like Kotaku in Action as well. I know because like uh, I made it like a very conscious decision on my part to like be more accepting of trans people. Like I encountered trans people in Gamergate for
Yeah.
the first time in my life, and I
Tachyon,
made. And no, no, like so I know because like I was in there. Like anytime we saw
very nice.
transphobic stuff, we would oftentimes like people like me would downvote it, and it would get downvoted, and we'd like have upvotes on Kia that were very pro-trans. In my own videos, like, and I interviewed trans people. I talked with them on my streams, and who were pro Gamergate, and I even
So
made like 2 videos actually, advocating for like accepting trans people, and like they were very well received within the Gamergate community.
so Tachyon, I'm willing to take that at face value, but hear me out because I think that you have to then explain how it became anti-trans, especially with so many anti-trans people like the Quartering, like Mike Cernovich.
Bordering
And
never
now
supported
that's
Gamergate. In fact, he has a tweet out where he's
exactly.
like, "What the fuck? I never supported Gamergate. Why do people keep saying this?" He even
Also,
he
So
I just
may
literally
I?
linked
called
in
out Anita
general chat
Sarkeesian and called and
Kotaku and
well, he
steered
might
her
disagree with
in
Anita Sarkeesian. That doesn't mean he's pro Gamergate. That's
he
a whole
steered her
separate like
in
thing.
lockstep with Gamergate.
Oh,
He said it was about
well, he
freedom of
can speak for
journalism too.
himself. He wasn't even involved with our
Or
movement.
sorry, it was
He,
about
by his own
ethics in
admission,
journalism.
by his
He
own
said it was
admission.
I just
yeah,
linked
he
in the
might not
general
have the
chat
best
a
memory. He's a
Kotaku in
fucking drunk.
Action
No, he
thread.
also like if you
So
look at it, he didn't have
you're
videos
missing
on
my point.
Gamergate.
You're missing my point. My point is that the way that it did become very anti-trans and reactionary, and how that differs from your experience warrants an explanation.
Well, I think
And
Kotaku in Action became that,
So may I?
to be clear, because Kotaku in Action became super right wing. Because, and I think that's, I've criticized them for that at the time, very much so. I even left the subreddit very publicly,
You
had
are one of
multiple
the good
discussions with
ones.
the moderators. But like, no, like it's because
He's not
Kotaku in
like those
Action,
other gamer
look at
girls.
Kotaku in Action also became like a massive culture war subreddit. It moved away
Yeah.
from GG stuff and became a generalized culture war sub.
Yeah.
Both because of the rule changes and also because other subreddits were banned. Like if you look at the numbers on Kia, like during the heights of GamerGate, like say spring of 2015, it was 30,000 users. And then by the summer of 2015, it was 50,000. And that was with some of the rule changes that had happened that allowed more and more stuff in. Um, and now it's 150,000, 149,000 people. Like it became like something way beyond just Gamergate and brought in large numbers
So
of people who had more of a conservative view.
Yeah,
if I
the
may,
movement
Well,
was
because
one of the
co-opted by
problems.
people like me.
Okay, so what Oren was saying was how it was a warning. So, in my opinion, the warning was to journalists because they weren't listening to their readers. This is especially a big problem with those who do long form, like not videos, but just straight up writing. And even now, I have not seen journalists get the message, including the ones, like I said, that my dad works with. So, one of the messages should have been there's a big opportunity here to tell truth. Problem was, they kind of took the easy way out. They just copied other journalists, quote unquote, and ran with that because it's the easiest and best way to get clickbait.
I mean,
And
genuinely, good luck with that. Like, mainstream journalism in basically every area fucking sucks. Like,
yes,
these
so
these
how
people
did it
either
become
have an
so right wing?
ideological agenda or are beholden to a particular fucking billionaire who has his own agenda. You
Yes.
know?
And that's where the money is, or they
Yeah.
think it is. I think there's actually way more money in being liberal and writing more journalistic things that are just telling the truth, period.
Yeah.
But
I don't think that. Okay, but that's not what journalism is for anymore. Unfortunately, like there are people who try to do good journalism out there, but the vast majority
yes,
of like mainstream media it has a purpose, right? And that purpose is decided by the people who own the company or the people who can give the most money to the company generally. And the people in the video games industry, right? If you want to get a review, if you want to do a review, then you got to butter up the big video game companies' asses, right? Just a little bit. You can shit on their games occasionally, but overall, you've got to be buttering them up. Otherwise, they're not going to send you the review copies and shit.
Yeah, no,
Like
I mean
they're
that's a problem.
yeah, it's a huge fucking problem, right? And in the mainstream media, obviously, you got the problems of like the Murdoch family owning half the fucking newspapers in my country, for example.
indeed.
Right, so they decide on a narrative, and then they run different pieces designed to target different demographics to try and bring everybody together to a particular conclusion. Generally, like I don't know, Labour sucks. We should deport all the brown people. You know, whatever the fuck it is.
But
So you're placing you I guess what I'm trying to say is you're placing your critique at the feet of some of people who don't give a shit, right? Like, and there needs to be something else built up in place of these mainstream institutions,
And that
that
is
can be
something
more
we tried to
reliable and
do.
be better.
so Vivian,
I
you and
agree.
Ninetales have just discussed with us at length, like on the topic of feminism and gaming, on the topic of Gamergate even. Like, why couldn't this conversation have happened 10 years ago? What would have been so
I
bad if like
I
if
believe this
instead of
conversation.
demonizing,
I believe
good.
this conversation was happening in certain places like 10 years ago, but but the problem is when you're attached to the mainstream movement, which was engaged in some pretty horrific behavior, was making
We were the
some
mainstream
awful
movement. Like
vitriolic
this
stuff.
wasn't. This is something that Ninetales says too. Like, oh, well, the real GamerGate was people like Avius. Well, no offense, Avius. I mean, like, but
Yeah, no,
but like we were
there was
the
no
real movement
moving
was
me.
us.
The Gamergate that we are addressing is not you. We are
I mean,
addressing.
I don't know
You're
what you
addressing
I don't know
something
what you
big.
fucking did.
GamerGate.
I don't know what you fucking did. I'm not about to take anything any of you fuckers say on face value, okay? Um, but at least for the purposes of this conversation, I could say that like um there are reasonable critiques to be made of Anita Sarkeesian. I am worried about Auron's assessment, for example, that this is the ideology that later became wokeism. That because I think that that's a really dangerous way to sort of like think about things and frame things. Um, I don't believe in this spectre of wokeism that is destroying everything, right? And I think it leads people down some pretty fucking dark paths. But there are reasonable critiques, obviously, of Anita Sarkeesian, right? She didn't get everything fucking right, not even remotely. I've seen some of her videos on there. Fuck it, I'm forgetting what the fuck it was now. But just where she gets like tropes and leaves out context, like completely wrong. At the core of her argument, though, I think there is something there as well, right? And I think that there was a hugely outsized reaction, whether it was from you, whether it was from other people, whatever. There was a hugely outsized reaction to what she was saying. There was a massively outsized reaction to what happened to Zoe Quinn and her fucking depression game, right? I don't, and I think unless you're part of Gamergate, right? The bit that you were part of, is openly like against and anti all of that shit.
We were.
Then you can't.
We had
Yeah.
the anti-harassment patrol that I was part of, and I wasn't the only one. We had like at least 50 people.
You have to remember,
Auron's a moderator of like well, not anymore, but he was a moderator of multiple
I can
GamerGate
believe
communities.
that.
So was I. Like we wouldn't tolerate this shit in any of our spaces.
you have to
Yeah,
remember that the
we
mainstream.
would try to get them banned if anything was slightly quote unquote bad for the image, or even just because in my case it was immoral, so I didn't want it, and that's why I never on there.
And
But
if you want to,
the image was fucking
what
terrible anyway, right?
too
And you
dark,
got to remember the mainstream media didn't focus on like you or if they focus on Tachyon, right, they would have focused on the worst parts of Tachyon because that's what gets people to click. There were people on the left who had debates with half decent gamer gators. Those debates just didn't get a lot of traction
not the
because it
people
wasn't the
with a lot
narrative
of
that
influence.
liberals and mainstream
Like
media was looking
the
for.
people who had the debates though, like virtually all of them were like rando people on Reddit. Because I know I hosted these debates in many cases. If they
No, some
brought
of
them on
them,
my
like
show.
some of the left people were bigger streamers with who were debating admitted randos, but
Most of them were not willing to talk. Trust me. I know.
No,
I tried
they
very much
definitely
so.
weren't.
A
And
couple were.
if
A
you
couple were. Like the Motivator Opinion, I believe was. Claudia Brown was. SGW. Well, he was like a tiny channel. He only like 800
but
subscribers.
when
But
did
like he was
you
willing to talk. Like there were a
like
few
I'm
people, but
talking
they were
about Bread
small.
2 era, right? Like
if
This
you
was
want
before
to talk
Gamergate was before
though,
Bread 2, I believe, right?
I know that's what I'm
Or
saying.
well,
Like
it
you should have
happened
you should
during
have kept
GG. But
trying because the face of leftist politics did change quite a bit after that.
if you want to talk though about things that drive people to dark places, let's talk about the idea that you dissent just a little bit from this SJW woke, whatever you want to call it, type political stances, and you get demonized, you get banned from everything, you get lumped in with all the worst harassers everywhere, and you're basically thrown out into the wilderness. Not literally, obviously, but metaphorically.
Nowadays you talking about?
No, I'm talking about back then as well.
Okay.
It's still to an extent true, but back then as well, you would get banned from all kinds of places. You would get
From
vilified,
subreddits and things.
lumped in with the worst people, and then who's offering you a hand back up? Who's who's there to bail you out?
Oh yeah, the
Somebody like
reactionaries.
somebody like
Yeah,
Breitbart, people like that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
most people, you put them through something like that, and you put them in a position where they are feeling completely betrayed and homeless and beat up. They will take that hand. They will take it
Here's the
because
thing.
most people are not able to withstand the
here's
trials
the
of
thing.
Job.
Here's the thing, right? as a trans person here in the UK, like back in it was like back in 2015 they did a poll and 1 in 3 employers were not willing to hire a trans person. I can guarantee you that has got worse over time in the UK because public attitudes towards trans people have
Yeah,
been shown to have gotten worse.
you live on Turf Island, and I feel
Yeah,
really bad for you
it's
about that.
it fucking sucks over here, right? Um, violence against us increased fucking massively. All right, so like not just not being able to get onto Reddit forums or whatever. Like as a trans person in the UK, it's really hard to get a job. It's really hard to get healthcare. Okay, it's impossible to get your voice heard in the fucking in the mainstream media or whatever, right? And all the while you're dealing with constantly every single fucking day on media people calling you people saying that everybody like you is a fucking pedophile, a child groomer, a child mutilator, whatever, right? You're all perverts and fucking freaks. With in the United States, some openly calling for the fucking execution of anybody who has anything to do with you, right? Certain Republican politicians,
Yeah,
like,
and you have
made
every
statements
right
like that.
to be mad
So
about that.
no. I understand that. I understand that, right? And there are people who would offer me a hand up, right? Who I who I simply would not take it from, right? Um, the fucking there are batshit crazy fucking tanky motherfuckers who I would not go near with a fucking barge pole who would happily offer me that hand up and say, actually, it's okay, you can come join us or whatever. I'm not gonna fucking do that.
But the
Okay?
reality is, a
This
lot
is
of
not a
people
fucking
will.
excuse.
A lot of people will, and it is
Yes.
understandable. It's a known fact of human nature going back to the year dot. I mean, it's in Shakespeare. Thou calledst me a dog before thou hadst a cause, but if I am a dog, beware my fangs.
But Vivian, like part of the problem, like, is that all of us, we just got completely dismissed. Like we're like potential allies. Like this is like sort of the tragedy of the GamerGate story. Like the real tragedy of it is that like instead of like us all coming together and having a conversation about how we can like improve the gaming industry together and like also address like the stuff that a lot of us also care about too, like the way that women go into these voice channels, which we talked about earlier, and like they're immediately put down. Like we can address that, and we can also address games journalism. And we can also address like anti-consumer practices and creative freedom, and like we can talk about all these different things and have like a real discussion and come together and like build a better gaming industry together. But instead of that happening, instead of people coming together and seeing potential allies, we were just completely demonized. And like that's not to say that like there were bad people like on our side too who might not have been open to having those conversations. But I think like the vast majority of us were. And like still are actually, which is like why we're here tonight talking with you.
I will add Eric Kane of Forbes magazine was a leftist, and he was also a games journalist who warned everyone straight up, do not trust Milo Yiannopoulos and definitely not Mike Cernovich. They are grifters. They are using you. They will completely co-opt everything. So it wasn't like we all just sat around being like, well, guess I'll have to go join the right wing because they're the only ones who talk to me. And I definitely didn't. I got actually more liberal and leftist because I kind of was like, no, get away from me.
Can I give my avious confession? I fell for Milo's bullshit.
Yeah, a lot of people did.
I totally
Beautiful.
thought that he was just trying to help us and give us a fair hearing. And I saw a lot of bad shit that he did. And I just dismissed it as, oh, he's just trolling. He can't be serious. This is harmless, etc. And I made a lot of apologies for him because I felt like he was the only one who was listening and the only one who was giving us any kind of platform. And I tolerated a lot of shit that I shouldn't have. And I eventually stopped. And I can proudly say that I played a role in Breitbart getting blacklisted on KIA ultimately.
Good job.
Good job.
But I realized that way too late. And I should have seen it much earlier. But he would say things like, You know, he would write an article, "This is the day that I decided to be gay." And I thought, this has to be, you know, next level post-ironic trolling silly bullshit. And I was making excuses for him because no, he really believes horrible shit like that. And I should have said it.
And I wasn't
I have
fooled by
wait, wait.
Milo. My view at the time was that hey, look, at least somebody from the mainstream is willing to talk with us. And like I think that's good. And in my head, I was like, oh, well, as long as we just hold him to the same standards we hold everybody else. But a lot of people, maybe even myself at times, like maybe didn't do as good of a job as that as we wanted to. I did ultimately end up condemning Milo, but maybe too
So,
late. I should have realized earlier. I knew he was a grifter, but I thought he could be useful.
no, I want to follow up on where we were actually headed before, rather than the nostalgia wank over Marley and Oculus.
This is turning into the GamerGate Truth and Reconciliation Committee.
There
yeah,
you
no
go.
shit. That's making me nauseous. So,
It's a safe place.
no, it's fucking not. So, Oron said earlier, right? Like, I don't know if I'll ever be over this. I think was one of your was a paraphrase of what you said, right? And that you see that is that the ideology that you were fighting against then has morphed into the current woke ideology of today. Now, there are some things that people who are sympathetic to your side would complain about that I would completely agree with, right? We mentioned pinkwashing earlier. We said about like the liberal media sucking absolute ass. Okay, right. There's a lot of stuff like that that really, really fucking blows. But I do not see any of these things as like the biggest threat or the thing that I really need to be worried about in my life or in the country in which I live. And I don't think they are in the United States either. I know I'm an outside observer, but I do talk to a lot of you guys an awful lot. And obviously my work takes me into like extremism in the United States as well. And it does seem to me that the reactionaries, right? Some of whom came out of GamerGate, not all of them, but some of them, right? They are the greatest threat to American and English freedom currently. They are the full-on authoritarians, right? Not the, oh man, I think we should probably not have as many titties in this video game kind of authoritarian, or hey man, maybe you shouldn't call that other dude an N-word kind of authoritarian. They're the, yeah, no, I'm gonna use police to like beat people up so that I can take a fucking photo op with the Bible kind of authoritarian, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that Trump is a fascist. I think he's a major threat, and I think that like that
He's too
ideology and the
damn
fact that our
dumb to be a
system's unable
fascist.
to initiate the reforms necessary to like stymie him, it seems. Like I think that's like the major threat too. But
I mean,
but also there's
it's not
but he's
just
also a
Trump.
reaction.
Trump is
Trump's Trump and like that idea, those like far right ideas, like those are I think also a huge part of that. Not all of it. A huge part of it though is a reaction to this extremism on the left.
okay, and that's what
Yeah.
I want to. That's what I want to get at, right? Because obviously, I said there are things that I would agree with, okay, but like the things that really, okay, what is wokeism? Oron,
All right.
what is it? Why is it so dangerous?
Wokeism is essentially taking the idea of class struggle and oppressor oppressed class binary and applying that to immutable identity characteristics instead of economic classes. So it's stuff like, you know, white people are the inherent oppressor class of black people, and all white people are racist and will always be racist. You know, men are the oppressor class of women, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And creating these dichotomies between groups of people over traits that they can't control and are just how they were born, and arguing that to correct these imbalances, we need to sort of positively discriminate, and we need to have double standards in all of our morals and even all of our epistemology to compensate and to achieve equity rather than equality. And I think that that's very dangerous. And
Okay, so I basically know
That's very
absolutely
Marxian of you.
I basically know absolutely nobody who believes the things that you've just said.
well,
me neither.
When you say
can I finish? Can I
What?
finish?
I'm sorry. I thought you had finished.
Because I do think that there is a deeply authoritarian streak to a lot of this that is very much a mirror image of the authoritarianism on the right, and I'm frankly scared of either of those extremes winning, because
Right.
you look at things like, Ibram X. Kendi, who I think it would be disingenuous to argue is not a very influential author on the left. And he has argued some openly totalitarian stuff, like that we should amend the Constitution to establish a Department of Anti-Racism. And this Department of
There you
Anti-Racism
go.
has,
What are they going to do?
as he envisions it, would have essentially absolute power over everything. It would sit above all
It would
three
have
branches
veto
of
power over
government.
laws. Yeah.
Yeah, it would sit above
What
all
the
three
fuck?
branches of government. It would have the ability to reject any laws, reject any court decisions, to remove elected officials from office, remove judges, and essentially impose its will on anything that it decided was racist according to Kendi's equity-based definition. And then you've got stuff like, as I previously mentioned, I am Jewish. And 2 weeks ago, I saw the woke left be absolutely terrifyingly awful when a colossal terrorist attack was perpetrated in Israel. It was the largest single day massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. And
I'm not sure if that's true actually, but it was
I,
fucking
I,
horrific.
I believe it is. I believe it is the largest 24-hour killing of Jews since the Holocaust anywhere in the world. And the response to it from many of these woke elements, like chapters of Black Lives Matter, was to cheer it on and to say to well over 100,000 Twitter likes that, this is what decolonization looks like, and this is what it means. And, to cheer on protests where people were yelling "Gas the Jews" and, displaying
You know that was a
Nazi flags,
right-wing
things like
protest, right?
No, that was a protest.
The one in Sydney.
Yeah, that was a bunch of Hamas supporters. And yes, I agree with you. Hamas is a religious nationalist, extreme right Islamo-fascist organization.
No, I'm saying the protest in Sydney was a right-wing protest. It was like borderline neo-Nazis who were
Was it?
shouting.
Yes, but most of them in
shouting,
America
I saw
have
a
been
lot of
left wing.
Palestinian
The
flags
people-
there.
The people chanting "Gas the Jews" were basically neo-Nazis. Yeah.
Fine.
No, there
Fair
was
enough.
one in America where people were also saying it. There was also one in America where they were holding up swastikas at a fucking far left rally.
Yeah, but it was.
I'm sorry.
not-
I'm sorry. If you're
it was
holding up a swastika,
been
you're not
low.
far left.
Okay,
Okay.
that is a no true Scotsman
I'm going to-
mentality.
No, it's
I'm
not
gonna
a
I'm gonna go to
true
bed pretty
Scotsman.
soon.
That is-
But I do
that is
want to
I'm
say
saying,
something.
I'm saying you can't be far left if you're an actual Nazi. That's not no true Scotsmaning, okay? That's like saying you can't be a true Scotsman
Hey, I'm
if
gonna-
you have never been to Scotland and were born on Venus.
I'm gonna
okay? Like,
close
these
down
things
this.
are so far removed.
I'm gonna close down the stream soon. You guys are welcome to, of course, keep talking. I do actually have an Oron Dark Lord like
Yeah,
confession
but
to make
I just,
too, and I just
I
want
just want to finish this
Go
whole
ahead.
point, which is that you can debate whatever details you want on the rallies, but there were a lot of left-wing figures who
Yeah, there
were
were.
endorsing it and who were saying that this is what decolonization looks like, and that this is okay to do to
Yeah,
people
there were
who they
a
deemed
lot of real dumb American leftists. Yeah.
this was okay. And this is a legitimately totalitarian attitude that these people have
I
on
don't
the
know if it's
basis of
totalitarian,
their
but
of their oppressor class versus oppressed class binaries, that if somebody is deemed
Thought we
part
were
of the
talking
yeah,
about
oppressor
it's
class,
a very surface level analysis of
it's
that
okay
oppressor
to
class
do this
versus
stuff.
oppressor.
I do want
Yeah,
to say
it's a
though
very
that
surface level
And I
analysis.
think both
Oh
of
my
those
god,
groups,
fuck me. Can I respond to this ever?
He just
you
wants to bitch
can,
a lot.
but
both of
I'm
these
gonna head out in a
both of
second.
I've
these
sat very
extremes are
patiently and
scary.
listened.
Okay, I'm done.
So it's a very shallow and stupid fucking view of this oppressor versus oppressor class fucking analysis. I will agree with you there, right? And it permits some really fucking horrible things. I would say the same thing about like Tumblr taking up intersectionality and being like, well, if a black person's in the room, they're the one that should get to speak anytime, right? Like that's also fucking stupid, right? There are a lot of people who have very stupid, shallow, surface level analyses of leftist critiques of society, right? And they say and do dumb things. Okay.
AKA neoliberals.
I mean, most of them. Yeah,
No,
sure.
I will
Hang
not take
on.
credit for this. That's on your side.
So I do want to say because I'm going to
And
close the
also the
stream down
tankies,
soon,
man.
but I actually like Oron actually on the GG stuff. I'm not like ever gonna. I'm not ever gonna like not be stuck up on that. I mean, like, I don't get me wrong. Like after this book, I'm going to. Which, by the way, Vivian, if you haven't checked out, it's actually really good so far. I'm doing this interviews live,
I
most
mean,
of
you
them.
would say that.
No, I think Ninetales would back me up on this. Ninetales, have I done a pretty fair job for the most part?
I haven't seen all your interviews.
I
But
want to
from
see
what
your
you've
interview
seen and from how I've interacted
with
and talked
Zoe
about
Quinn.
this, what do you think?
Tachyon, I've told you what I think. To me, there's a big difference between a propagandist and a journalist, and I think you lean more towards the former. And so my critiques are like, I think you're going to make another piece of slanted propaganda, but only because I've seen a lot of cognitive dissonance from you since we first started talking.
Wow.
But I don't know.
Ringing
I don't like.
endorsement.
Okay.
I'd
Well, we
have
can.
to read the book to actually have an opinion. That's why I'm uncomfortable saying what I think it's going to be like.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. But what happened to us was bullshit. Like it really was actually. And like, don't
Sure.
get
And
like I'm
what
gonna move
happened
on my
to
life and do other
Anita?
stuff, but
What happened to Anita, Zoe, and Brianna was fucking bullshit too. Don't get me wrong. I can't
yeah,
fucking
like I
stand
don't I
Brianna,
don't like
but
disagree. Like,
that was
it,
fucked up
I
too.
don't think
That's
people should
insane.
harass anybody, but it's
Yeah.
also bullshit that we got falsely smeared for this, and that also that our movement did a lot of really good stuff and had a lot of really good people in it, and all of this was just washed away because of mostly falsehoods.
Hello.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but
But it is bullshit. So I'm gonna go to my grave, and I don't know about Oron, I don't know about CC. But like I'm gonna go to my grave disappointed that these lies did this
What are the
to us.
hey,
falsehoods?
man. Well,
Because
That the
I
think,
think
well,
we've
Gamergate
think,
was a
identified.
harassment campaign.
I think we've
I think what
identified
you,
that
I think,
a lot of people here have dealt with
fuck
shitty
me.
people who are likely to harass women, like far right people. Maybe not you, Tachyon, but almost everyone else has, if not Avius being one of them. It seems like
Wait,
this is
what?
more common than
Hang on. I don't do that anymore.
I know, I know, I know. Chill.
I
Okay,
think there
just the
are.
way you framed that statement sounded a
Sorry.
little bad.
I just want to finish. Um, I think that if you actually open your eyes, there's a lot of evidence right there that it was obvious all along that people were going to see Gamergate this way because the people who do harass women totally hijacked your movement. Now, Viv thinks it started like that. That's where we diverge,
I mean,
but that's only because I've talked to you, and I think maybe you're right about how it started. Maybe.
but the thing is, if you go to your grave, fucking still feeling pain over this shit, that's because you've done fuck all else. There are other things happening.
Oh, I
Like
know.
you
And
would
I
not,
care about other
you would
stuff.
not believe, the fucking campaigns I've been involved in that have ended far worse than fucking Gamergate. Like the absolute fucking purge of leftism from the Labour Party here in the United Kingdom.
Oh,
The
man,
way the fight for
first parties, I can safely say it's because of us on the Democratic US, because they were just like, we can't tackle Bernie by saying he's anti-Semitic, but we have to stop it from the UK or it'll gather steam over here. And I honestly
I mean,
think that's how
it's partially because of people like Bannon and Teal and so on, sure. Right?
yes.
But like, but there's a lot more to it than that. But regardless, what I'm saying is, right, like the campaign for like trans rights here in the United Kingdom and so on, right? Like there are so many fucking things that I've been involved in where I've seen it go all up in flames and I've seen a lot of people fucking hurt. I have friends who've died because of the state of trans rights here in the United Kingdom, right? And if I focused on one fucking 3-4 year period of my life where I was engaged in one particular fight that went fucking horribly, yeah, I'd go to my grave fucking depressed. But there are other fights happening, and you guys probably need to move on to those now.
All three of us,
Like, it's been
or at least CC and I,
9 years or whatever.
CC and I at least, I assume Oron too. Like we do have other stuff going on in our lives. Like I don't like this isn't going to be like the only thing I care about.
Yeah, but that
Tachyon's a
doesn't
jet
mean
fighter,
that it
okay?
doesn't smart. That doesn't mean, just because you move on to other things, I'm not saying that I sit around all day thinking, man, Gamergate, we got so robbed.
I mean, I do now because I'm doing the book, but
yeah, but when I think about it, when I think about those events, when I'm involved in these spaces,
Well, I mean, how robbed
yeah,
did you get?
I still resent it. I still resent what happened, and I probably always will. I don't think that there's ever going to be a time where I just go, nah, it wasn't a big deal. It kind of was. That doesn't
respond to Viv,
define my
actually.
life.
I
But
just don't think it is a huge deal.
it's
If I'm
going to
going
be
to
a
be honest with you.
permanent,
Viv, I think
Like from
I
your
think people
perspective,
like
I don't know what you stood to gain that you lost. Like not much, right? Maybe a slight bit more titty in your video game. It seems like from the conversation that we've had tonight.
Yeah.
Is like
In
the
my
main
case,
thing that
like I
you're
said,
upset
I
that you
got
lost.
forced out of volunteer spaces, and I still get people who are trying to say you can't be in XYZ as a, for instance, a mod or other things. I mean, yeah, there's other places I can go, and I'm not like dressing or anything, but for other people, they were completely defamed. So I get it. Like even what Oran said, he's not allowed in a lot of Reddit posts just because he was in the the Kotaku
So
in
make a new
Action
Reddit
post.
account.
and I was canceled actually at one point. I'm not sure. Oron and
Viv,
CC might
I was
remember.
gonna say, like, to the extent that Tachyon is actually was trying to be a games journalist or was writing about that at the time, and his side of the movement was trampled on by the much bigger right wing, which seems plausible that that could at least happen. I think that that is where it should matter to them, and they do at least have a point. Um, I'm still undecided personally as to how true that is, because I'm not familiar with the gaming journalist side. That's like the last part I need to really look into before I'm going to have a complete analysis of the whole thing. But I I do worry that someone like Tachyon was actually trying to address that issue and got shouted out by the people who were worse than him, and then the mainstream media focused on those people instead.
I
It
know.
happens to leftists.
I actually really appreciate like how you've approached the topic, Ninetales. The only like we like pretty like do disagree on this a lot, but I also feel like this is something we talked about last night, and I don't know. Like I know you said like the ethics side, like I was involved in like the ethics side. Like that's true, I was involved in the ethics side of things. I think all three of us were, but like we
Yeah.
also, or at least myself, I can't speak to anybody else, but it wasn't just like oh I only cared about ethics. Like I also was like an anti-SJW to an extent, and I also like did believe that, and still I kind of do actually believe that like some of these critiques and some of the ways that these critiques were implemented in terms of like tactics used by activists were actually stifling of creative freedom in the gaming industry, and like that was like an important issue for me too, and like that's like you could say that that's
No,
me
there
being
are
right
still
wing
big
maybe, but like
titties, but nothing's really changed.
I
Like,
just
there's
don't get. I just don't get.
A ton has changed.
Like, I play
you're
video
afraid of
games. I
wokeism, which
enjoy
doesn't
video
exist.
games. I don't get. I don't get how you could let it take up that much of your fucking life. Like the video games industry, for fuck's sake.
We just cared
Like, we're
about it a
talking
lot.
about. We're talking
Oron.
about.
It's my
We're
main.
talking
I have a
about.
question for Oron.
We're
Just
talking
because
about toys here. Like,
Well,
fucking
you said
hell,
they're
man.
art, right? They're works of art, and they're
Sure.
from
yeah,
our view being
it's-
stifled.
It's my main hobby. I play video games for many hundreds of hours a year.
Yeah, and you're a big fan of Ancient Rome and you love Warhammer 40k. But like, it just
That's a little bit of a dog
mentioned
whistle.
Watching one show set in ancient Rome, I would not describe myself as a big fan of ancient Rome.
okay. But I
finally asked Oron my
I
question.
play a lot of video games,
No.
dude. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I couldn't let this take up this much of my life. I really couldn't.
But it's also, it's not just video games. It's pretty much all cultural and media spaces have been subjected to the same creative pressures. And I do think that matters for all the same reasons that there are
But like
activists
so far the only negative effect you've managed to like talk about is like less titty.
Okay.
And I can't see that
okay,
as a
let's-
serious issue.
Yeah, when you
let's
gishgaloped about
imagine
wokeism, one of the things you said seems to be false because I can't find this Department of Anti-Racism. I found an
What?
anti-racism
Oh no,
secretariat.
Ibram Kendi. No, Ibram
didn't say
Kendi.
that.
Ibram Kendi definitely has this fucking idea around
Oh, okay,
some weird
that-
department of
I-
something.
I was just trying to find something that was real or like some sort of source for it, and I couldn't.
And like the discussion being shut down, like CC was arguably canceled, and like I'd say I was canceled too by people on social media. Do you remember the Archon? Do you remember the Archon panel?
Me?
Well, anyone here, but I CC or Oron might. Remember I was hosting the panels at NatsuCon, Arch Anime, and then
Thank you, Oron.
also ASTL, but the ASTL one they didn't approve that, which is fine. They don't have to approve it. But the Archon one really was bullshit. Because I was the subject of, I mean, you could call it cancel culture. And I know you said that like it doesn't exist, but like I feel like I was actually subjected to it because I've been going to this convention for a decade since like 2012 or so, maybe 2011 or 13, I don't know exactly, but I've been going there for a long time. Every year, I love this convention, and I was going to host a panel there on GamerGate with Anna Valens actually, um, and this group of people on social media mass contacted the organizers to try and get it canceled, and they succeeded. And the convention even lied about it and said, "Oh no, we never agreed to do this to begin with. It was just an idea that we were floating," which is not at all true. I even showed the emails at the time. They 100% were on board with doing it, and they lied about me. And this group of people online canceled my panel, and they tried to do it a second time too at NatsuCon, but NatsuCon wrote a letter saying that they don't endorse any of the views, but that they respect the open discussion. But like, yeah, this isn't like the worst thing in the world that's happened to anybody. People have lost their jobs and stuff. That's obviously way worse. But like, I was the subject of like one of these online mobs.
I will add there were a bunch of devs who were part of Gamergate and they've been blacklisted. They're not even allowed to be game devs at this point. They'd have to go completely indie on their own.
Yeah,
And
game
even
designers
then,
talked
there
about that.
are there are those who, straight up will say, "Oh, so okay, this was one of the things. One of the trans game characters I was trying to link is blacklisted because the dev was in favor of the free speech angle of Gamergate." So, yeah.
Well, the thing is that
Oh,
with the
and Game Designer
mainstream
says the Indie Awards were also compromised,
God.
which true.
Well, anyway, since you asked what I'm losing and why the whole titty thing matters.
I gotta go to bed, but thank you so much. You guys can keep talking. I'm gonna close the stream, but you'll be off air unless Avius or someone else is streaming.
All right.
But you guys keep going.
Uh,
Have a good
Well,
talk.
I just want to make this point.
I
At
seem to
some
be the
point,
only
we should
person
go
here
to.
who actually stops talking when someone else is talking. I'm just saying.
I'm so sorry.
That's an exaggeration, and I'm giving myself a pity party, so I'll stop. Have a good night, Tachyon.
Thank you. Have a good night.
I am also going to head off and get dinner. It was a great panel.
Because you know I'm going to pester you about your homework.
Who, me?
Yeah.
All right.
I
Well,
haven't done any of the homework. I have failed.
You just have to walk away from your keyboard, go outside, and touch water.